mean, what's really great about this is that, you know, poetry is getting acknowledged. I mean, that's what pleases me the most. And because often it's overlooked, I think, in awards of a more general nature. Like this one is, that, you know, it's for all comers, all good writers, which it should be, I think. But and I think also this particular award, which you know, aids and abets writers and readers, and, you know, a grant is given to the local library, is, and in my case, I'm splitting that because I live in a twin city, Lafayette and West Lafayette. I live in West Lafayette, but, you know, I use the Tippecanoe Library, which is the Lafayette Library. It's the county library. And so I'm splitting that between the two libraries. And I just think that's just so brilliant that that is part of that, the Glick legacy, you know, that they're thinking of both ends of that, the writers and the readers. Poetry finds its readers, but it's never going to be abundant. It's never going to be, you know, life-supporting kind of activity. So, which in a way I think is a freedom for poets. But it also means that the important thing is one's own development, one's own relationship with your work, and feeling that, you know, grow and develop over many years. And I think, and there's, you know, of course we send poems out and we get rejected, or we get accepted, or, you know, it's always both. It never, you know, it's not like this Darwinian climb ever. But I always tell my students anyway that part of it, that part of the public life of it, is really like, treat it as a hobby, like raising tropical fish. You know, it's kind of interesting, but it's not the consuming thing. It's not driving it. What's driving it is your own love of writing, your own trying to figure out the mystery of things, which is really what poetry's about. And I think that's the great pleasure of it. Which takes me back to the earlier thing we were talking about, that poetry is getting acknowledged, particularly this year, you know, in both the national and the regional slot. And so it's very heartening to me that that kind of, in a way, private enterprise is getting publicly acknowledged. I teach undergraduates. Right now I have an undergraduate workshop and a graduate craft course. And yeah, I mean, you know, I love to, it's a real privilege to be able to spend time and get paid to sit around and talk about things like image and line break and what poems do, and, you know, mystery and clarity and those connections, and the technical aspects of poetry, but also the larger kind of the dream life of poetry, right? And to have people really engaged in looking at these small changes. And I think even my undergraduates, very few are actually going to go on and keep writing poetry in a serious way, probably. But, you know, to have 6 months where they're really looking very attentively at these small machines of words, I think hopefully will make them attentive to the whole world in all kinds of ways, right? And so I think it's probably a peculiar blip in time in history that we're even allowed to do this. I mean, somehow we're lucky. We're in this little gap where that's happening. You know, so that's a great pleasure, and I, you know, feel very grateful that I've had this job all these years. In my undergrad class, sometimes we do some kind of in-class writing. I write along with them, and then we go around and read what we've written. I read my pathetic little piece too, you know. So and sometimes actually those end up, I keep working on those, and those become actual poems, right? So, you know, so that's kind of a perk for me. But mostly, you know, we're talking about their work, and also I'm exposing them to contemporary and modern poetry, which is pretty exciting and very different than what they've gotten in high school usually. I think they're kind of amazed at the variety and liveliness of it. It's been really a pleasure to come here and, you know, see so many people that love poetry, that are here, you know, and old friends of mine who have come out for this, and because, you know, really this state has always been I came here 30 years ago from Maine, where I was teaching, but in a place like Maine, I love Maine, and it's really beautiful, but you are always from away. You're never a Mainer, you know. You're never a Maine rider, even if you've lived there, you know, many decades, I think. So, but when I came here, I was immediately embraced by, you know, I mentioned some of those people to thank them, and I was immediately embraced, you know, as a writer, as a friend, and so forth, which really surprised me. You know, they had nothing to go on, but they did that. So it's a very welcoming place, and I felt that tonight in this beautiful library. And as I said, I'm very impressed with the Glick family, that they have supported this. You know, it's very moving seeing Marianne Glick up there to speak.